start. So this is podcast 2, chapter 2, Why We Excess. I am Jayana Humphrey. My fellow group members are Caitlin Long, Aaliyah Miller, and Kawan Pulliam. I hope I said it right. Our learning objectives for chapter 2 are define the meaning of the terms formative assessment and summative assessment, understand the positive impact of formative assessment on student achievement, understand how formative assessment and summative assessment fit into a balanced assessment system, and understand research-based strategies for implementing formative assessment practices in the classroom. And I will pass it on.
So I had objective one, which was define the meaning of the terms formative assessment and summative assessment. So formative assessment is either the formal or informal processes teachers and students use to gather evidence for the purpose of informing next steps in learning. So I thought that it was really cool to put just not teachers use it, but students also can assess their own learning using formative assessments to know whether or not they're on track with what they're supposed to be doing or if they need some additional help in that. And then a summative assessment is an assessment that provides evidence of student achievement for the purpose of making judgment about student competence or program effectiveness. So these are more bigger assessments. They kind of have weight to them, typically with a grade. And they can also be used by districts or states or schools to see where their program and curriculum may need to improve. So going back to formative assessments, they support learning and should be used throughout the entire process to gauge that learning by the students and the teachers, whereas summative assessments come at the end, typically of a unit or a chapter, for those bigger grades. Some examples of formative assessments are checking in with students. So that's my favorite. I have mini conferences with them where I just pull them up individually while other students are working on independent work and check in to see what they know, what they're struggling with, if there's anything they need me to know about their life or anything like that. I check in with them emotionally then too. But you can also do quick little thumbs up or thumbs down, or quizzes can be a formative assessment, whereas summative assessments are like a unit test, like a culminating project, a presentation, an EOC, things like that. So those are some examples of both formative and summative assessments.
I like that you said that you do mini check-ins with them as a form of formative assessments. I feel like that's a nice creative way to do it because it's not full on like an assessment. It's more like casual conversation, but you're still assessing them and seeing what needs they need. So I like the fact that you do that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, and I will go ahead with objective 2, which was understand the positive impact of formative assessments on student achievement. So when I read this section, I looked at formative assessment and how it's a practice that occurs during the learning while students are still practicing and improving. And so in this section, we learned about Paul Black and Dylan William, who were two British researchers who in 1998 they published a review of research on formative assessment practices. And these practices involve students from kindergarten to college across different countries. Their analysis noted the achievement gains associated with formative applications were among the largest found for any instructional intervention. They also said the power of formative assessment lies in its ability to guide both teacher and student actions, keep learning on a successful track, and maintain students' belief that success is attainable. And also within that, Black and William found that 3 practices had the highest impact on student growth, which was use of evidence gathered during classroom work from homework to determine current state of students' understanding, with action taken to improve learning and correct misunderstandings. Secondly, the provision of feedback during learning, which helped with the guidance on how to improve, and then the teachers, and then the current state of student understanding, action taken to improve learning and correct misunderstandings. Secondly, was the provision of feedback during the learning with guidance on how to improve. The teacher examines the information, interprets it, and shares it with the students while also having the students examine their own work. And then researcher Ward Sadler concluded that the greatest potential of formative assessments lies in teaching students to monitor the quality of their work. And I liked his point with that because it allows the students to get involved with their assessments too, just showing that it's not just a teacher thing, but it's really everybody. It's full circle. It takes both working together, even if they don't quite realize they're a team. And thirdly, the development of student success, development of student self-assessment and peer feedback skills. So success is in reach. That is something the author says throughout the chapter, and that's something I also believe that success is in reach when the students are able to reflect and learn from what they have done. Let's see. And they, oops, let's see. Excuse me. Okay, they make it known that because of the results that come from formative assessments, not only teachers but students are also able to take action to improve their assessments and their feedback and their possibility of the outcome for the year. And to close it off, assessing as a whole gets to the point where it's, oh, wrong section. Okay, that's it.
I liked the part you said about reflection, 'cause that's a big piece of the culture at the school I work at is reflecting. Like the staff does it on events or things like that, but we also have the students do it like after they go on a college visit or after service learning, just so they can like really see how it impacted them and take time to like process their thoughts. So I think that's important.
All right. So, chapter two, objective three is understand how formative assessment and summative assessment fit into a balanced assessment system. So, from the readings, we are able to balance assessment systems when we build them to meet information needs of different users. So, there are different levels of assessment, which is used by teachers mostly to determine grades. So then you have, so excuse me. For example, classroom assessment, which is used by teachers, mostly determine grades. Then you have annual testing, which is used by district and school leadership. Annual testing evaluates achievement levels of each student and essentially summarizes that to determine possible changes in curriculums. Finally, you have district benchmarks or common assessments, which is similar to annual testing, but is looking to evaluate program effectiveness. So in my district, we utilize all of these assessment types, and I think they all serve purposes for a balanced year. Annual testing tends to be most, tends to be the most strict testing period in my experience. So for example, this can be seen as EOGs. So the kids feel pressure to perform well. The staff feels pressure from their administration, and admin feels pressure from district/central office. So it's a lot going on in school buildings during that time. But school staffs tend to do a lot of end of year incentives to reward kids and allow breaks in between testing days for breathers. So that ends objective number 3.
Woo, there we go. All right. Okay, so I have objective four. I'm gonna try to like condense it as much as I can because it's a lot. And I also have reflection question three. So with objective four, I would say a formative assessment is used during learning and not just at the end. I feel like for the levels that, of course, we teach on, um, we would, depending on what you teach, I know for me, um, we do it throughout the year entirely with all grade levels. It also helps teachers check for understanding in real time. So to help reflection and where they are at currently at whatever is being taught. I feel like that's helpful with that. And then instruction should be adjusted based on what students actually need, not just what was planned. I feel like a lot of times, especially in core classes, um, of course, unfortunately, you have kids going at different paces and everybody's not at the same pace. And I think assessing them is great in that aspect as well. And then you also have student work discussions, and mistakes are valuable evidence of learning. I feel like it's okay to let them know when they are wrong, no matter what age group they are in, and are able to reflect on that. I know for us, we have something like when they're doing like their I call them pre-tests before their actual EOGs or their interims. We actually sit down and we go over numbers with each and every student, and we tell them like, hey, this is what you did good at. Hey, this is what you can improve on, that type of thing. And I feel like just them hearing, oh, like you did semi do good right here, but you can definitely do better here is a pivotal moment for them, especially when they're not necessarily getting encouragement at home or not being paid attention to at home. So I feel like that's also helpful. And then the goal is to improve learning and not just collect grades. I feel like at the end of the day, they are supposed to reflect, they are supposed to retain, they are supposed to be able to have some gaining knowledge from the experience of whatever is being taught. And then I'm gonna move on to reflection question three. I feel like the strategy I feel most confident implementing and providing regular descriptive feedback while students are learning. This feels very natural to me because it is something teachers already do. It's just about being more intentional with this. So, like for me, like I'm not just gonna tell you good job. I'm not just gonna tell you, oh, like you did poorly on this. Like I want to explain why and what you did to make it either good or bad, rather than just saying something like good job or putting a grade on an assignment. Descriptive feedback helps students understand the why they did well or what they need to work on next. It also keeps students focused on improving instead of just chasing a grade, and it gives them clear direction on how to move forward. I also like this strategy because it allows me to adjust my instruction. Of course, I have a lot of students with 504s and IEPs, and then some students who are also EC and stuff like that. Like, just I know this is probably off topic, but last Friday when we were in school, I had one of my autistic kids cooking in the kitchen, and I was just like, now she's high functional, but it just kind of like warmed my heart for her to like feel included and not excluded, and to actually be participating and learning and doing, and then telling me like I got it, I got it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, as long as you got it, but I'm here to help improvise if need be. So I feel like that was like really good. um if I do notice a pattern where students are struggling with the same concept, I do tend to slow down, reteach, or try a different approach before moving on. Overall, it feels practical, effective, and easy to use consistent consistently in the classroom. And then just some more points to highlight. Um, so of course, regular descriptive feedback, and then this strategy feels natural and realistic, of course, to use in and outside of the classroom. It also goes beyond just a good job. It helps teachers catch misunderstandings early. It also allows for quick instructional adjustments before moving on. And then descriptive feedback supports students within the movement within itself. within our classrooms and outside of our classrooms. It also builds confidence and keeps learning moving forward. It also is a strategy that can be used consistently and effectively.
That was really good. And I like the fact that you use descriptive feedback because that's very important now. Because it's like a lot of times they'll ask, what did I do wrong? Or like, what happened? Or like the whys. And I feel like with descriptive feedback, it eliminates that completely or it helps them understand it better.
Yeah, I think they can like learn more from that feedback rather than just their grade. Cuz like okay, an A means this, a B means this. Yes, on paper, but what does it mean that you actually have learned? So I think that's important. And it goes to being like specific with your purpose of assessment and your objectives and things like that. So I had reflection question number 1. I think did I have one? Yes, I think I did. Okay. Which ideas in this chapter did you find most convincing or useful and why? And one of the little quotes from the chapter that stuck with me the most was make space for students to grow in their learning before grades are assigned and help them see that not knowing something isn't a problem. And so I feel like I constantly, because I'm teaching 17, 18, 19-year olds, I'm constantly like telling them like they think that they should already know everything because they're adults. And so I try to tell them like if you knew everything that you're taking in these classes, then what's the point of taking the class? Like you're here to learn and there should be classes that are easier and harder because you're, naturally inclined to certain things. But there are things that like you have to study and you have to learn and if you knew it all there would be no point. Um a lot of times too like because they're applying to college and they have their associate's degree or get finishing it up before they graduate, they're like trying to figure out exactly what they're going to major in at college or what they're going to do with a job. And I try to tell them like it's okay not to know exactly what you want to do or to change your mind. Like I never thought I would want to be a teacher and here I am like yes, would it have been easier to go to school like the first time for it? Yes, but it's always possible. And so I think that helps them to like feel like comfortable in like growing their learning and growing what they think they want to do with their lives because they can see like you don't have to know it all and that is applicable in their classes but also in life. So that really stuck with me is like as someone who was very grade motivated in school, like I wanted to make A's, I wanted to be top of my class, all of those things. Sometimes I even like forego the or didn't pay attention to the learning because I wanted to get the grade. And as a teacher, I know that's not the best thing. And so trying to tell them like, yes, learning and like having these assessments where you can see if you actually are learning is important. So I think that that's like the most useful thing for me as a teacher is to like remind them of those things. And to give them that feedback that y'all were talking about so that they can learn and grow instead of just assigning them a grade, which would be so much easier if we just said like 100, 90, 50, whatever, and called it a day. But it's better for them to give that feedback. So.
Okay, so question 2 was how does this chapter align with your own beliefs about teaching and learning? So, as a second year teacher, I believe that assessments for students are important and help measure progress for each year. However, I do believe that testing does not measure how intelligent or smart or how smart students are. So, as we know, there are various types of learners, and some students struggle taking formal tests but thrive in different areas. So, my subject slash content area focuses more on project-based learning, which is the form of classroom assessment that I use. I think this type of progress monitoring is most effective when having classes full of diverse learners. So you are able to fairly assess the skills of all your learners and they are usually very excited to be able to work with their classmates to complete different projects and merge all their ideas together. So that is my reflection for question 2.
Okay, and moving into the last reflection question, which was what a part of this chapter makes you feel uncertain, nervous, or hesitant about applying in practice? And for this one, I put assessment as a whole because I don't ever want to feel like it's to the point where I feel like and the students feel like I'm over assessing or they're only doing enough to pass and not actually grasp the material. Like Caitlin said, going back to the point of all they see is the number. It's all about the numbers. So I don't ever want it to get to a point where it's like they feel like they're not grasping the content or they're just doing what they have to do to get by. Also says as teacher, the stress of assessment can sometimes become a lot because a lot of times, especially when you go up higher in administration, a lot of times they'll see the numbers as compared to the student and the teacher, and if it's not what they want, it gets to that point where it's like a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety on both the teacher and the student because they're all trying to get to that point where it's acceptable. And this takes me back to a time when I was student teaching back in the family consumer science classroom, and the students said they weren't going to show up to take the exam, the final exam at the end of the year, because the class didn't matter. And even then, as the student teacher, I felt the pressure that the lead teacher had in that situation because at that point, numbers are completely thrown off. There's a zero balance now. And for me, that was very anxiety feeling anxious because as a student, one, they shouldn't feel like that. And two, as a teacher, there was nothing she could have done in that moment. So that's how I feel about assessing as a whole and why that might be my biggest concern as I move into higher grades and not pre-K and start assessing older students. It gets more challenging.
And just to add to that, although I am a core teacher, I do see a lot of that where everything is based on like number.
Mhm.
And like when we are sitting down with those kids and we're having the conversation of what their scores are looking like and what their projected scores are to be, go in it and tell them like, well, first, like you have to be open. These are just numbers. They're not telling you how intelligent you are, how what you are capable of doing, or what you're incapable of doing. It's just for data purposes, which is why we say in the beginning, like give your very, very best, do your very, very best. Don't just guess or just do what you know that you can do and go from there. And then if you do mess up or if you do make a mistake, you know what to do going forward. But now they do like beat the core teachers. When I say they, I'm gonna say the district. They do beat them over the head with if you're not. I know for us it does not really matter, but for them, like if you're not reaching a certain level of scoring, like that could potentially cost you your job. But then nobody also doesn't want the stress of what, oh my goodness, like majority of my kids are behind it. Maybe like 15% are literally only passing, and I'm literally doing all that I can. I'm doing tutoring, I'm staying after, I'm doing really more than what you probably should. I'm working with their parents. You're probably even taking some of your weekends because I know that's the thing too, and making sure that these kids literally have what they need in order to excel and succeed. But it's really not just about numbers at the end of the day. It's way more than that, and it goes way further beyond the classroom.
Yeah, I always think back to when I was substitute teaching. I was like all over the place. So I was in EC, I did elementary through high school, and I was with this particular school quite a bit because they had two of their three fifth grade teachers out for cancer and a maternity leave. And so they just had one teacher and two subs almost the whole year. And it was right after they took their end of grade tests, and the teacher that was their regular teacher, we were out on the playground, and she said, I'm going in there to talk to the principal. She's like, because he sent this email about how they don't have they didn't make their achievement score. She said, but every single one of them showed growth. Like they were all showing growth, even though they may not have met the grade level score. She's like, they had 2 subs the whole time, pretty much all year, and they all had growth. And so that really stuck with me when she said like they all had growth, and knowing that like whenever they come to us, they may not be on grade level, or they may have deficits in their learning due to, a learning disability, due to COVID, due to whatever. And how like we shouldn't get as discouraged on if they're not meeting level if they are showing growth. And so that was encouraging to me when like looking at those bigger assessments, which my class isn't a tested subject, so I don't really have to worry about it. But I know some other teachers at my school who are beginning teachers do, and so I tried to encourage them with that like assessment. It's good for you as a teacher because then too kind of where you're at, and you can make goals for yourself. But does anyone else have anything they want to say before I conclude? Okay. So basically this chapter was on assessment. It was, what are the assessment types? What are the purposes of it, especially in looking at student learning and student growth, and how we should have a good balance of formative and summative assessments as teachers in our classrooms. So that was our chapter.